Hi there. In my last video we looked at a subscriber request who was trying to place 3 BSP bets on the first, second and third favourites, and but only if the SP of the favourite was above 3.25. Now as he was trying to do it, it's clear that that particular way doesn't work, simply because if we recall, BSP bets cannot be cancelled once they're submitted, and there's no mechanism in which you can set up a condition for the second and third favourites to check the SP of the first favourite, because SP is not known pre-race, of course, and all the SPs are calculated at the same time by Betfair at the off. So there's no way you can manipulate the bet submission of the second and third favourite. Now in my last video we looked at a workaround where we place an SP on the favourite and do the other two just after the off. I'll let you go back to that video to review that. This time we're going to have a look at another option where you can do things pre-race. So this is the original automation for the first video. The first 3 rules here I've disabled, but I've left them in there just for comparison's sake. The next one we're going to do pre-race, but there's a number of things that we need to set up. But your biggest danger is that when you submit your BSP bets, the favourite falls below the limit, the minimum limit that you specify as part of the BSP bet. Now if that happens, Betfair won't match that money. Effectively Betfair will cancel that bet. However, the other 2 will still be taken. So it's something that we need to try and mitigate against. And the way to do that is delay the submission of our BSP bets to as close to the off as we can get through the features of the automation. So this is what the rules that you see before you here are trying to do. Let me just scroll this down a little bit so you can see all the rules. So what we're doing first of all is we're making use of some sound files that I've created, which are freely download from the support files section if you don't have them already. Every race, when the runners reach the start of the race, there's a market status condition called at the post. In addition to that, in the event of sprints where we're starting in a stall, there is a market status condition called going behind. So what I've set up, the first 2 rules, is a rule that will play a message that I've created at the post and going behind. Now you don't need to play those sound files, you can just set those up as being dummies. The important thing is that these rules should fire when those conditions are true. And so what we need to do is actually set those conditions up. So the condition is market status. Click on the drop down arrow here and choose at the post for the first one. And the next one is, you'll be surprised to learn, the same thing, except we will be going behind. Okay, so as long as those conditions are met, these individual rules will fire. In the case of long races where it's a tape start, this one will not fire. So what we now need to do is to set up our bets that check for these conditions. It means that you have to duplicate your betting. So for example, we have a bet first for a stall start, bet the first favourite for the tape start, and all it is that the conditions are slightly different. Now I'm using the distance of the race as the defining mechanism. There is an overlap. So for example, a stall start, I'm looking for races that are less than 1 mile and 7 furlongs long. There are races at Wolverhampton, for example, where there's a stall start for a 2-mile race. In that case, it would be treated as a tape start. There is a more complicated method than I've used in the past, and you can look at some of my older videos where I split this up and it actually checks to see for the existence of stall draws, and it uses that mechanism. But this is a much easier mechanism, albeit with that caveat that there will be some races that instead of stall starts they'll be treated as tape starts. So essentially we have two bets that are essentially the same. The only difference is the race distance, and that's of course one of the conditions that you can specify. The market race distance, which is down here. Now, in addition to that, you'll notice that all of these rules are checking for the current price of the favourite. Now, I've set it to 3.5, although the minimum odds limit for the BSP bet is 3.25. That's to try and mitigate any reduction in the price of the favourite after we've submitted our bet. The biggest danger with doing pre-race stuff here is that once we've submitted our bet, as I've mentioned earlier, the odds come down on the favourite SP bet isn't taken, but you still end up getting bets on the other two. So we want to try and mitigate that somehow. So these bets are all checking that the favourite is equal to or above 3.5. That's a figure you might want to play with. But essentially we have three pairs of bets. One for stall starts, one for tape starts. And the only difference between them is the distance specified. Everything else is essentially the same, except that the next two will place their bets, their SP bets, on the second favourite, and the next two on the third favourite. Now you'll notice that these conditions are effectively all the same. You've got three that are exactly the same, and the other three are exactly the same. So one of the things that you could do from an administrative point of view is to create another couple of rules that actually take all of these conditions and check those on their own, and then have each of these rules simply check those conditional statements. So let's set that up, and the easiest way to do that is simply take the first rule here, copy and paste it. We'll go in and change its details. Conditions for stall start. The action is going to be dummy, we don't need to do anything here. And the conditions, those are all the conditions that we want. Click on OK for that. And then we need to do the same thing for the tape start. Again, these will all be the same. Let's just move these up a little bit to before the okay, so we've got let's put these in the right order. So we have a conditional statement or a conditional rule for a stall start and a tape start. Now what we need to do is to go in to each of the actual rules that we've created, remove these, and stick in, this is going to be for a stall start, so we need to check the conditions for stall start. Should be equal to 1. And do the same for every other rule that we've got further down the list. Now you might be wondering, why on earth do you want to do that? Well, if you have a look at the rules, you'll see that we've got 6 rules that place bets, all with similar conditions. What we're doing here is amalgamating all those into one rule for stalls and one rule for start. So if, when you're playing around and testing this strategy, you can simply go into 2 rules now to change some of the conditions, instead of having to go into 6 rules and change the conditions. So it's purely an administrative feature. So let me go ahead and finish this. Okay, so I've finished the editing. So we've got our 2 conditions rules, both set to dummy as far as the action is concerned. So they won't do anything other than just execute when these conditions are correct. And then all of the bets, or all of the rules that place the bets, simply refer to the corresponding condition to check that conditions are right for that bet. Now the reason for doing that, although you do not need to do it and you can have these conditions in the corresponding rules, is simply from an administration point of view. If you want to go in and play around with some of these conditions, for example, you may want to change that condition from 3.5 to something else. You've only got 2 places to do the editing. You don't need to go down 6 different rules to make those changes. Similarly, the subscriber indicated that he would only do this on races where there's 5 to 8 runners. Same sort of thing. You could put that condition inside these 2 conditional rules, and it saves you going down and setting that up in all the other individual rules. So the whole purpose of doing this type of thing is try to mitigate the situation where, having placed the BSPs and before the race actually starts, the odds of the favourite shorten in price and the SP bet is ultimately not taken. You want to place those BSP bets as close to the off as you can possibly get it to mitigate that. Now, something else that you can do if situations where there's a lengthy delay for whatever reason, they may be late going down to the post, for example. I've also set up a window in which these bets, or these rules I should say, are active. So you've got from the scheduled off time for a further 2 minutes. So if the bets haven't activated by then, this race would effectively be ignored. So that's another setting that you may want to play around with. That said, with all those conditions and all those rules set up, all we need to do now is wait for a suitable race. Okay, we're going to test this automation out on this race at Kempton, the 4:30 7 furlong novice stakes. You can see the odds are all reasonable as far as the settings are concerned. And but one thing we haven't done, although we're only 40 seconds out, they're not at the post as yet. So that looks like there may be some sort of delay, although they are going down at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see if this 2-minute setting is kicks in and we end up with a race that's not suitable. So as I say, they're still going down at the moment. We'll just let this run and keep this market up for the moment. But in the meantime, let me just run through some of the drawbacks of doing it this way. The main drawback is that once you've placed your BSP bets, the favourite shortens in price such that it falls below the BSP limit you've set. In our case, now that's interesting, that race has just gone off and it's still saying it's going down. So there may be an issue with the data feed from Kempton. So what's happened is, because the play at the post rule didn't fire and the going behind rule didn't fire, our bets weren't submitted. Okay, let's try another race, shall we? In the meantime, let me just finish what I was explaining. The favourite may shorten in price to go below its minimum limit that you've specified for the BSP bet. In which case that BSP bet won't be taken by Betfair, but the BSP bets on the other runners will. In addition to that, the prices of the other runners may change in between you submitting the BSP bet and the race going off, to such an extent that one or both of those runners may not be the second or third favourite anymore. And so you'll end up with bets on the fourth or fifth favourite according to BSP. That's the drawback with this particular method of doing things. Okay, let's jump to another race. Okay, off to Dundalk for this race at 450. The going behind status has just come up. So you'll see here the two rules at the post and going behind are both triggered. So our conditions should be set for a stall start. As you can see, we've got stall numbers down there. And there you can see our bets have been placed. Let me just switch to the My Bets tab. So you'll see that we're looking at backing Blackjack Hills, George Zukov and Miss Australia. So let's actually switch the order of those to the back odds. So George Zukov is the actual favourite at the moment, then Blackjack Hills and then Miss Australia. Australia, strange name. So we just need to wait for this race to go in to see which odds we actually get in the end, and then I'll wrap the video up. Now, all in all, I would suggest that this method, although it's a bit more complicated, is probably the more reliable, simply because the method I showed you in my earlier video, its main drawback is that one or both of the bets on your second and third favourites may or may not necessarily be taken right at the off. It may be sometime during the race when they start to drift that it actually gets taken, and it may not necessarily be what you want to happen. Let me just switch the order back to Betfair so that they're not jumping around. So you can see that we got 7-4 for Blackjack Hills, 4-8 for George Zukov, and 8.6 for the third favourite. Okay, so that's how to implement it pre-race. Just to recap, some of the settings that you might want to play with are that setting here, the 2-minute setting here, and that's about it really, nothing else. Oh, possibly the min odds, but that's a requirement that the subscriber wanted. Okay guys, thanks very much for watching, I hope that was helpful. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.